What's up, everybody? What's going on? It is Dives, Mr. Crockpot on Twitter. Welcome to another edition of Party on Broad. The POB podcast can be found on iTunes and Spotify. Smash those 5 stars, leave a review. If you guys are here watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. On tap for today, I bring in 3 of the major heads of Philadelphia sports. It is Marc Zumoff, Tom McGinnis, and Matt Murphy. From the Sixers to the Blue Coats, we reminisce about some of our favorite Sixers memories. We talk about the art of the play-by-play. It was such an honor. It was such a fun time. We'll start the interview right after the credits.
And the Sixers win it! Wow!
Oh man, and being just posterized Russell Westbrook.
You love the Philadelphia Eagles! Let me get a hell yeah!
All right, guys, I am beyond humbled and honored to introduce my first guest tonight. He is in his 26th season as the television voice of the Philadelphia 76ers, the best broadcaster in the biz. This guy is Philadelphia to the core. Please give him a follow on Twitter at Marc Zumoff. It is an absolute dream to say this, man. But tonight we have NBC Sports Sixers broadcaster Marc Zumoff joining the show. How you doing, Marc?
I'm great. I just feel great being with these other broadcasters, and I'm looking forward to talking about what it is that we do and who we do it for and whatever else you want to talk about. I got about 30 minutes.
Up next, we have one of the most underappreciated sports broadcasters in the history of Philadelphia sports radio. This man ranks right up there with the legends of Harry Kalas and Merrill Reese. Make sure to give him a follow on Twitter at McGinnis Thomas. It's an honor to introduce the radio voice of the Philadelphia 76ers. He is Tom McGinnis. What's up, Tom?
Good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining, man. And then next up, we have my man from Delaware. He does the play-by-play for the Delaware Blue Coats, the next star. He switches hats on a regular basis. And I got to say, Murph, you're one of the nicest people I've ever met, man. Give him a follow at Matt_Murphy04. Welcome to the show, Murph.
Thanks for having us. This is awesome. I promise we didn't coordinate all to wear blue, but great to be here. So much respect for these guys and what they do, so I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, let's start the show. The Last Dance gave sports fans some much-needed nostalgia over the past month or so. What were some of your first impressions of a young Michael Jordan playing at the Spectrum against the likes of Sixers greats Mo Cheeks, Julius Erving, and a young Charles Barkley? Go ahead, Marc.
He was an instant star, and quite frankly, I thought there were a lot of people, maybe Olajuwon aside, who knew that he was clearly the best guy to take in the draft. The Bulls obviously got a gift when the Portland Trailblazers went with Sam Bowie. And the thing that I discovered over the years with Michael Jordan was that a lot of what you're seeing in The Last Dance is true in terms of his accessibility. I'm sure he had his moments where he turned down interviews or maybe was a little more curt than kind. But I know that there were times where we would just grab him when he was coming off the floor after getting up his shots, or wave to him in the hallway or what have you, and say, hey, can you sit with us for a few minutes afterwards? He said, fine. Much the same was true when we were in the locker room with him as well. So from that perspective, I thought Michael Jordan was absolutely great to cover.
What about you, Tom? Any first impressions?
Well, I piggyback on what Zoo is saying, that Michael is a good person. He was raised by good parents, very down to earth, and there's been so much talk in the wake of this, and every Monday after all the different episodes about with a bully and all that. But that was his drive to be successful on the basketball court, and I had many conversations with him over the years, going back to 1988 before I was even in the NBA. I used to go to Atlanta, and I would pick the good games, and that would be the Bulls and the Hawks with Dominique. And then throughout the years, and I grew up a Bulls fan. I grew up, as I've mentioned in other forums, about 100 miles from Chicago, way before Michael Jordan ever got there. And then I think what people forget, and you got that in the last episodes when he was talking about these players joining for the last 3 championships, is the Bulls were terrible before he got there. I mean, really went through some tough times. When I was a youngster, like early teens, that's when they were good. That was the last time they were good, with the likes of Jerry Sloan and Norm Van Leer and Chet Walker, former Sixer, and Bob Love. Those teams coached by Dick Motta were in the Western Conference. But after that, it was a real struggle. And, Rod Thorne and Jerry Krause get a lot of credit for getting rid of a lot of players and building the roster, and then building around, the greatest player of all time, in my opinion. So, and then just to call the games, that was incredible that he was in. Just an absolute treat to watch a player of that skill level take on the Sixers so many times throughout that span when he came back. Because for me, that's when I caught him in action in a Bulls uniform, and then, of course, the Wizards after that.
Murph, what were some of your top takes of Michael Jordan, rewatching The Last Dance?
Sure. I mean, I was glued to The Last Dance like pretty much everybody was. And I guess my Jordan memories would be more so what would have been episode 11, if there was one, his time with the Wizards in the early 2000s. That was kind of the Jordan that I grew up with, as weird as that might sound. But it was so cool seeing some of that footage, seeing the Barkley connection that you made, seeing some of that, not only the Olympic stuff, but them doing battle in the NBA was really cool, and I was locked in the whole time.
Tom, so you grew up as a Bulls fan. What was it like watching Allen Iverson cross over Michael Jordan for that first time?
Well, I mean, we'd already played the Bulls. That game, if I'm not mistaken, was in March, and I know we'd already had a trip out to the United Center to Chicago, and as Alan has said, he was going to pull that move on the best, and that was the guy he adored growing up. So that was a frozen moment in time, you know what I mean? That one play, and he got him the bite, and he did many players throughout the years. So, and again, if memory serves, the Sixers won that game. That was terrific in and of itself. Because anytime Jordan came to Philadelphia and or any place, the building was going to be rocking and full of excited fans. So that was a memory, and certainly to think back on.
Mark, do you have any instant memories of that play that we watch over and over and over again of Iverson crossing over Michael Jordan?
Well, it was fortuitous because if I remember the play, I must have seen it 9,000 times already. But if I recall, it was Iverson going to the left side, and Clarence Weatherspoon was there to do a dribble handoff. And as we've seen on the replays and heard, Phil Jackson called out a switch. So that's what put Jordan on Iverson. And I could just hear in my headsets, and back then we were courtside, and I could just hear in my headsets and feel the crowd getting into it. And then, of course, the rest of it was just watching Allen do his thing, and he's often recounted that, he faked once to see if he would go for it, and then that planned out the ultimate move. And it was good to see Iverson actually pull up and hit a jump shot, because that was never known as his forte. He was always a guy who got to the line and got to the hoop. But it was a great singular moment for a team that was otherwise forgettable. Remember now, Iverson was a rookie, and those were some very tough years.
Let's move into the whole art of the play-by-play. Mark, what are some of the main differences between TV and radio play-by-play?
Well, the radio guy has to be good. The TV guy just has to put on the makeup and make like he knows what he's talking about. So, and the fact that I'm on here with Tom McGinnis is quite the thing. But let me just throw a few bouquets at Tommy Mack and say that he is the best at what he does in our league. And I've had people say to me, I've said this to Mack a million times, that they nearly drive off the road listening to him. And a lot of it has to do with not only his passion and his knowledge of the game, but the fact that he's really good at describing the action. So if you sit back, that's what you need to be able to do. You need to know who has the ball, where they are on the floor, and what it is that they're doing with it. And then you fill in the rest as it relates to facts. And of course, time and score is very important. And the other thing with Tommy is that he's a great conversationalist, and what you need to be able to do, especially when you're doing it by yourself, is to be able to tell stories and talk about the game, and he's clearly good with that. As the TV guy, you are just you're the host, and what you're doing is you're facilitating a lot of things. There are a lot of moving parts. So first of all, you have to be in tune with whatever the visuals are that are being shown at home, whether it's a replay, whether it's live action, whether it's graphics, leading to a stand-up by Serena Winters. It could be any one of a number of things. You're bringing in your analyst. You're doing what the producer tells you to do. You're paying off shots by the director. You're being handed stats by your stats guy. You're describing the action, but you're describing the action in a way that hopefully accents what people can already see. So there are vast differences between the two. Tommy's been able to slide over on the rare occasion that I've missed games. He's done a great job for us as a fill-in. And you're right. It is an art. There are a lot of nuts and bolts that make it a black and white thing, but it is an art. And the funny thing is, and I think Tommy will agree, that you could take all 30 of us on the TV side and all 30 on the radio side. We all do it differently, but to get to that level, we all do it well.
How about you, Tom?
Well, Zoo, you're too kind, so humble, gracious. I appreciate the kind thoughts. And Zoo's right. To his role, a lot of the TV job is focused on the very beginning, because in NBC Sports Philadelphia, that is award-winning coverage. When you watch the very beginning of the game, what they put in to the production of those elements, that's a really big thing. From that, I always felt, Zoo mentioned every now and then I pinch hit. Once you got over that, then you could sit down and kind of relax and do the game. So he's an orchestrator, everything that Zoo said in terms of all of those things in play. Oh, and calling the game. For me, it's me and an engineer and a guy back at the station that's helping with the commercials. But those guys back at the station do a lot. I mean, they do really a lot for the broadcast with all the different sound pieces that we put in during the course of the game, even if it's as simple as the halftime interview. But as far as calling the game, one thing that, and I started in television as a news reporter, and my career actually started in television news. And there was like this simple rule called the see it, say it, or say it rule. And it was as simple as when you're putting video on a screen and you're showing something, you should be talking about it. It's like what you often see, like the walking stand-up that somebody, they put B-roll on there, and then you're talking about the person in the picture because they don't really have a lot of video of that guy or whatever. But for me, how it relates to what I'm talking about in radio, I see the game and I talk about it. And to Zoo's point, you try to get in as much as possible while being able to communicate. If you throw in too much, somebody driving in their car to Wawa was like, whoa. So it's important to time and score, and as Zoo says, where the ball is and whatnot. The most important thing is to communicate. And I think over the years, you learn how to manage, like you can't start, waxing poetic on some stories when 6 points have been scored. So it's kind of a learned craft. And Brian Seltzer does some of our games, same deal as when Zeus says, when I'm out, and he oftentimes did college games. And the reason I bring up Brian is because in those instances, he's not as used to the NBA game. It's so fast. It's back and forth. And that takes, I think, an adjustment for somebody shifting into the pro game because it's 24-second shot clock. They're trying to get runouts. And in today's game with the quick shots and the threes, a lot of it is just speaking fast. And that, I don't know that that's a skill. That's just getting it out there because the game is played so fast. And that actually makes it easier because you're not, when our games are 2 hours and 10 minutes, you're basically just talking that whole time. There's not a whole lot of great skill in that. You're just talking about what's occurring during that span.
How about you, Matt? You do an amazing job with D. Lynham down there in Delaware. What's it like been for you?
Yeah, so first, the speed of the game. I made that adjustment only 2 years ago, and it's the G League, but it's pro basketball. So I'm fortunate I get to do TV and radio. So I do mostly TV, but I do get to shift to radio a few games a season. And when it comes to radio, which is what I was trained in, it's all about painting the picture. And these guys have done a great job on touching on the differences already. But that's something I so admire about Tom on the radio side of things, just the ability to paint that picture for the listener. And then on top of that, with the enthusiasm that he gives it. I love the line about people driving off the road listening to him because he gets that into it while he's painting that picture. And then on the TV side, I think just captioning what the viewer is seeing, which is what I admire about Marc in the sense that he has that amazing ability to caption and capture the big moments of what they are seeing when the game is coming down the stretch. So just providing that caption on what the viewer at home is seeing on the TV side.
Mark and Tom, like earlier in your career, did you wear as many hats as Matt has to do with in the Delaware Bluecoats? And like, how has play-by-play changed over the years? Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I'm going to defer to Mac because I know that Mac has a million stories about coming into the business. And in fact, one of the things that you mentioned, Tom, which I'd like you to delve on, is the fact that you didn't start in sports, and neither did I. You started actually in news.
Right. So, and that as a television newscaster, and my first job was in South Carolina, and then I went to Florida. You know, you're in a two-person sports department where, in my case, I started as the weekend sports anchor in Charleston, South Carolina. And during the week, 3 days a week, I would be the reporter, like going out and covering South Carolina football or the Citadel or the College of Charleston, whatever it might be. So, you wrote, you edited, you produced, you delivered, you reported, you wrote, all those things. And then relative to what you're talking about with Murph in the G League, I did that. I was in the predecessor to the G League, and that is the CBA, that at the time, the Continental Basketball Association. And at that point, it was the official development league of the NBA. The cohesiveness or the connectedness to the NBA wasn't as great. We're talking 30 years ago. And so, yeah, you did a lot of different things. Hey, I sold size C program ads. It's in the book for $75. Yes, unless you want to upgrade. But you do a lot of things. Even my time with the Sixers, you know, like when I first started, and again, Zoo started doing the games a year before, but my first year was in 1995. The whole Sixers organization, the entire front office was 35 people. So you did, I mean, in the summer, I did all these summer hoops tours with World Be Free, where we were in the community and on like that. So, and that to me, like, I'll never let that go. And that is like a minor league attitude, willing to pitch in and do anything with a major league effort and skill set and professionalism that you bring to the task. And, you know, I reflect back even on those days in the CBA, and it's $75. I forgot to tell you, that's what I made per game when I first started in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. But, and maybe if I didn't graduate to the NBA and have spent, like, luckily enough, 25 years to this stage in the NBA with the Sixers, I would think back on that minor league product, but I don't. It's like got this romantic nostalgia to it in terms of how we came up in the business. So I relished all that. And even then, you know, it was kind of like a hoot that we were able to do all that and be around a basketball team the way I was.
Chris, let me throw one thing in. Tom had talked about all the different hats that he wore when he was first starting out, and I think that remains to be true. But even now at my level, and a lot of it has to do with this, the fact that you need to be involved in social media.
Yeah.
That today, for example, and I know that the NBA is in the midst of a hiatus, but we're about to do a series on the '83 title team and show those 4 games where they beat the Lakers. And we're doing a series of stand-ups around it where I introduce the games. I try to give them perspective. And I worked with this thing all day today. I scripted, I recorded stand-ups on this, I edited on this, and then I sent them to my producer. So media converging for sure, and the age of specialty, I guess, except when you're at the very tippy top, is going away.
Yeah, you know, piggybacking off of that, Mark, like with technological advances in like live streaming, like how do you see play-by-play changing within the next like 5 to 10 years?
Well, that's interesting. And I think the virus is going to determine a lot of that as we go forward, because there is going to be a new normal. And when they go with that new normal, if they feel as though that new normal is an acceptable normal, that might become the way to do things going forward, even when we don't have to practice social distancing and the like. For example, it's entirely possible that when and if the NBA goes back and they do it in this bubble, I won't be there. I'm going to be doing all the games off of a monitor at the arena. Now, does that become commonplace in years to come? I don't know. But if they like the way it sounds, it certainly can become an option. All the digital stuff, all the technological advances, that's going to involve me in a certain way and other play-by-play broadcasters as well. Just citing the examples that I had today. I'm also asked to interact with fans during a game. My company likes that because that's very important. And another thing is all the people who love you and hate you, they come up on that thing as well. And you get to see that afterwards and get the opportunity to interact with them.
We've seen like Twitch and the G League kind of do a handshake there as well. So what's that been like, Matt?
Yeah, so it's allowing the fans to get engaged in real time. So not that I'm monitoring the Twitch chat, but it's kind of that reinforcing idea of having to be on your A game because the fans can reply and reach out to you in real time. And I think in the future of broadcasting, there's going to be more of that, getting fans involved through social media, engaging yourself with fans through social media. I think remote broadcast is one of those buzz topics for the future of broadcasting, like Mark touched on. I think sports betting is another area that will continue to grow in the realm of broadcasting in the next few years, and it's already present at this point in the broadcast world.
And by the way, I keep on bringing the phone up here, but it really has been a game changer, so to speak. Entire productions now, or parts of productions, are geared towards making sure that the picture is good for your phone, that the audio is good. At times you see subtitles, that sort of thing. So like Marshall McLuhan, the Canadian professor, said 1,000,000 years ago, the medium is the message. That clearly is coming to pass in this age.
How about you, Tom?
Well, I would agree with both Murph and Zoo, and that is the actual craft or calling the game might not change. Again, going back to just you got to be able to describe the action, but how we do the game might change. And that's right. I mean, I think there's definitely probably some things that may occur down the road.
I would like to kind of get your quick reactions to some of the biggest Sixers moments in kind of recent history. Just quick gut reaction. Mark, lead us off. The Sixers selecting Allen Iverson #1 overall in the 1996 NBA draft. What was your quick take on that?
First of all, everybody knew that was going to be our pick, so it wasn't much of a surprise. The thing that I remember most of all is in anticipation of that, the forerunner to NBC Sports Philadelphia, the old Prism TV, we set up shop in the middle of the Spectrum floor. The Sixers held a draft party. The floor was mobbed. And I remember Pat Croce coming, I guess, from the war room at the Spectrum, and he was making his way to our podium in the middle of the Spectrum to do an interview. And it was just Pat walking through this sea of people, high-fiving everyone and accepting congratulations and that sort of thing. So the moment that Iverson was selected, that's the thing that I flash back to.
How about you, Tom?
Well, that was, the year before the Sixers had taken Jerry Stackhouse, and again, the Sixers were in a period of rebuilding. They had, before they made the playoffs again in '99, it had been a 9-year gap. So they were already in the middle of that in terms of not getting to the postseason. That's obviously how they got the #1 pick, having won just 18 games the year before. So you're adding a really talented young player who spent those 2 years at Georgetown. And Mark mentions the Spectrum. I remember there was the Sports Writers Banquet, which now is in Cherry Hill, but at the time it was at the then Adams Mark up there by City Line Avenue. And I think my brother was in town. I remember securing tickets. Georgetown was playing Villanova at the Spectrum and hustling, like everyone knows that banquet is a very lengthy banquet, so I might not have stayed right to the end, but hustling down the Schuylkill to get in there and watch Iverson. And I remember he was hawking a Villanova guard to where they had to change and have somebody else bring it up. So he was just an incredible talent coming out of Georgetown after those 2 years. And boy, he ended up having a tremendous run there with the Sixers, and it all started back in 1996.
How about you, Murph?
Well, quickly chiming in, I was born in '96, so I don't know how much light I can shine on.
Shaking the rattle, baby.
But I will say quickly that I had the chance to cover the Ben Simmons draft in Brooklyn, and seeing him be selected #1 overall, just those moments where it's big and it's going to be big when he puts on that uniform for the first time.
All right. Next one, we've got the Iverson step over on Tyronn Lue. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, Tommy Mack's going to have the much better take because he was right on it, and his call was just something that I'll never forget. He's way too good.
The best.
But I was sitting so far away at Staples Center, I felt like I was in Pasadena. And my view of it was literally in the upper reaches of Staples Center because we weren't doing the game by then. Of course, it was the network. And I just remember peering down. I was opposite that moment and thinking to myself, we're going to win this game. This is amazing. We are going to win this game. But Mac, you by far had the much better vantage point. Wasn't it right to your right? Would it have been right to your right?
The way it was at Staples at that time, and it just changed. I believe this year was the first year it changed. And that is, we sat next to the Lakers bench, and there was 4 seats between the table, which and I was at the very end, and then the Lakers bench, and then that happened in the corner. And Zoo would understand this, but like that, he's way too good. At a certain point with Iverson, 51 points, 52 points, 39 points, like, what can you say? And in that game, as it was percolating to what Mark is referring to, like, if this is going to be a Sixers overtime victory, you run out of superlatives. And that's what that, kind of maybe came to, and that he was just unstoppable, and the will to win was on such big display. And Eric Snow had some big shots in that game, and the Lakers were undefeated in the playoffs to that point. And to come in there and, not just win, but steal a game and give yourselves at the time, obviously, the upper hand in the NBA Finals after, getting there was just was an awesome feeling to watch watch him perform and deliver like that.
One of the best. All right, let's go to Murph. Joel Embiid's first NBA game against OKC in 2016. Any favorite memories from that?
I think just the culmination of the anticipation and to play that well, just unbelievable performance. Maybe I'll go back and listen to some of the highlights from these guys from that game. But I'm content to listen to the earlier stories too. You could just pass me over for the early 2000 stuff and 2001 season, all that. I'm going to listen to those highlights as well. But I just love hearing these stories from both of these guys.
How about you, Mark?
I just remember you were almost in disbelief. We certainly had seen him put the uniform on previously, but this was his first real game, and it had been such a long wait. And, after that first year where he sat out, you were thinking to yourself, all right, well, maybe this summer he'll be able to train. And then he had surgery again, and we had to wait another year for him. So I just remember the anticipation with the crowd when he just came out to get his shots up. It was, it was an unforgettable sight, and just seeing him score that first bucket in the first quarter was a major moment that I'll never forget. What
about you, Tom?
Well, and again, having seen Embiid in practice, and the players knew it, like Nerlens Noel would have been in that mix at some point, right? Those guys know it. When they're watching and they're like, oh, whoa, he's got a different skill set. And then to see it unveiled in a game was really special. But just watching the guys shoot around with the footwork and the hand-eye coordination, the ability to move with that body, we'd already seen it for a few weeks in practice. And that was just terrific. And if I'm not mistaken, that was one of only 31 games he played that first year. So here's to JoJo and staying healthy and just continuing to dominate in the years to come.
All right, let's go to Matt. Let's do the Sixers getting the #1 pick in the 2016 draft lottery. What was that like for you? Any key reactions to that, man?
I don't know. I mean, obviously things have begun to shift over the last few years, and I've seen a lot of the good young prospects come through Delaware the last couple of years as well. The team looks much different now than it did back then. So that was, again, something just starting new and kind of a reset at that point. So I'm all about the young guys, the draft picks, and the development. So that was a big moment for sure.
What about you, Mark?
Well, are you talking about the Markelle Fultz pick?
No, Ben Simmons.
Oh, Ben Simmons. Okay. Well, there was a big debate as to whether or not they would select him. And Mac, help me out here. Brandon Ingram, right?
Yes.
And people are going back and forth, and quite frankly, there was some doubt about, Ben. He went to LSU. His team didn't make the tournament. What kind of a player was he going to be? But by far and away, now Ingram's an all-star finally, but far and away, I think the Sixers got the better of those two. And now as I just look forward, I do think that Ben is going to start shooting from the outside. I do think that he will end up shooting his share of threes. And I do think that he will have multiple all-star berths. I can't guarantee a title, but boy, I think that soon he'll be one of the top 4 or 5 players in the league.
Fully agree. How about you, Tom?
Well, it's great that nationally the debate between Ingram and Simmons was raging.
Yeah.
But I don't think Brian Colangelo was ever in doubt that they were drafting Ben Simmons, because he was, we've seen how 2-time All-Star, Rookie of the Year. The the set is just incredible. A transformative player with that ability to take the ball from end to end. And again, with the way that things worked out, struggling for those years, and then be in a position to take the number 1 pick and to add a marquee piece. And now he's a Sixer, and especially what will be the start of this new long deal for him is just an incredible thing. It's rare that you're able to get a talent like that, to get the number 1 pick and then parlay that into such a gifted player that'll be with your franchise and will be a key cog in helping to compete for championships for years to come.
Awesome. Guys, I can't thank you enough for joining. Mark, do you want to plug anything, or do you want to just tell the fans what you've been up to?
Well, I've been doing a lot of work. Like I described earlier, we're going to have the 1983 finals, all 4 games in NBC Sports Philadelphia, so I'm looking forward to airing that. We've talked to some former players. We're going to have Billy Cunningham as well. We've been able to do that by Zoom, which is really great. That's the team that I covered my first year covering the Sixers. I was the sideline reporter for 12, 13 years before I got the play-by-play gig. And it's dredged up a ton of memories, including that parade down Broad Street.
How about you, Tom?
Well, it's interesting. We talk about the 83 team. I was just looking through some photographs, and Moses is in a picture with my son. And as you mentioned, Billy Cunningham. It was, I think the Sixers, when they were Daryl Dawkins, they were at our building, and the Sixers were unveiling a new uniform when they were there. And those are, and Julius, we've spent enough time over the years with Julius Erving, incredible people, great character. That's what wins championships. And then, so we're all missing basketball, but we all miss relationships and being around each other and being around the game and being around the people associated with the game, the players, the coaches, everybody, the staff, and obviously the fans. So we miss it greatly. Just to be able to talk about it, we're talking about play-by-play, you're getting me going a little bit. So I appreciate the opportunity. I hope that everyone continues to do the things necessary that we've been asked to do with taking care of ourselves, social distancing, the washing of our hands, being smart, being safe as we start to ramp up again. And hopefully we'll be talking on the radio and TV and doing all those things. So I appreciate the time here tonight.
It's an honor. How about you, Murph? Anything you want to plug? Big news happening with the G League right now.
Yeah, it's exciting to have some top high school players committing to the G League, a handful of them, almost a starting 5 coming to the G League next year. So that should be awesome. But I want to echo what Tom just said and echo his messages there as well. And Chris, you kind of alluded to the fact that in the G League, I don't have to do a lot. I get to do a lot in addition to play-by-play broadcasting. So just give the Blue Coats a follow on social media. I run the social media. I handle PR and media relations. So we've got different types of content coming out these days. So just give us a follow. The G League is an awesome league on the rise. It's about chasing a dream for the players, the staffers, everybody involved. And I think the future is bright. So get to 76ers Fieldhouse for a Blue Coats game.
That's a great place to watch a basketball game. It's very private. It's very intimate. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you guys so much for watching. For Mark, for Matt, for Tom. See you next time.
Sixers win it! Wow!
Oh man, Embiid just posterized Russell Westbrook.
You love the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me get it.